and welcome to SureenaSpeaks, and in this video I'm going to showcase to you the very many different roles that are out there, whether you've done your MPharm degree and actually you've decided that you don't want to do your pre-reg year, or you failed your pre-reg year, or if you are a qualified pharmacist. Either way, the different roles are available to you. Now, some general advice before I start. If you are looking for a new job or a new role, you can look at the general websites that are out there, such as Indeed, Reed. You could even go through recruiters, or I would highly recommend you getting LinkedIn. If you don't have LinkedIn already, or if you do have LinkedIn, make sure you are actually utilizing it in the best way that you can. Because the beauty of LinkedIn is that it's firstly a great way to network with like-minded people. You can see different jobs that are listed on there too. And also, if there is someone who's in a role that really interests you, you can connect with them and try and find out a bit more information about the role that they're in. Or essentially, everyone's profile is their CV, so you can see how they work to get to that particular position that they're in, and you yourself can then try and emulate doing the same career pathway that they've done. And yeah, it can be scary connecting with someone that you've never met before and never spoken to before, but worst case scenario, they won't reply back to you. Best case scenario, they might give you some advice that you didn't even realize beforehand, some really useful pockets of advice. So if you don't have LinkedIn already, do make sure that you do get it, and like I said, if you do have it, make sure you are utilizing it in the best way that you can. So if you have an MPharm degree, regardless if you've done your pre-reg or not, there are very many different roles that you can get involved in. And one of the big ones is industry. Now, I've said it before in a previous video, but I'm going to say it again now. Industry, we say the word industry, but there is so much within there. There are so many different job roles available. There are so many different pharmaceutical industries out there as well, whether it's the big ones that everybody's heard of, or maybe some smaller ones. There are so many different roles that you can get involved in within industry. And one particular role that is becoming really appealing to pharmacy graduates is regulatory affairs. And this is a particular role which, if you're interested in public policy and in public health, this might be a really good role for you. It's about ensuring that legislation is being adhered to. It might involve you collating some scientific data and ensuring the safety and efficacy of different medical products. So that could be medical devices, that could be cosmetics, it could be complementary medicines. There is so much to get involved in within regulatory affairs. Daily activities within it can be quite varied as well. So if that is something that appeals to you, then make sure it is something that you look into. Now, within industry, there's also research and development. You could also go into, say, clinical trials. There's also manufacturing. There's so many different roles within industry. It's a case of actually doing your research, and that will be a common theme for any of these job roles I'm going to mention to you today. The real key thing is doing your research about it and actually looking at, is this job role best for you? Will it suit the needs and desires that you have? Can you see yourself doing it long term? Really research into what best works for you. Now, another role that might interest you is medical writing. Now, with medical writing, maybe you particularly enjoyed writing your dissertation, or writing is of a keen interest to you. Well, actually, maybe a job role in medical writing would really suit you. So it's not necessarily that you're going to have to write essays and essays about things. You might actually have to produce presentations or posters, present data in a particularly eye-catching way. Not necessarily just for pharmacists, but it might be for those in other sectors within healthcare, or for patients, students, actually tailoring your language according to the audience that you have to write for. And there are many different organisations which will need medical writers. So it could be regulatory bodies, it could be privately owned organisations, it even could be going into health journalism. So writing for something like the Pharmaceutical Journal, or being part of Chemist and Druggist, the BMJ. You could even be a columnist for a newspaper or a magazine. Again, it's about doing your research, and if that is something that appeals to you, if that is something that you think, actually, I could do that and be really good at, again, research into it. Look in your LinkedIn about who is currently in, say, the Pharmaceutical Journal, who has a job role in Chemist and Druggist. Get in touch with them, make your connections, because not only is about different job roles that there are, it is also about networking and creating connections with people that are in roles that you are, and as I said before, the different advice that they could give you, and that could actually make all the difference. So another role that may be of interest to you that maybe you didn't consider before is actually doing a law conversion course and then becoming involved with, say, criminal law, civil law, employment law. Your role could also include advising and representing registrants at various stages of their proceedings. It could also involve investigating fitness to practice panels, for example, or investigating various committees. So again, it's about actually branching out and seeing what other roles that there are for you, and maybe an idea of doing a conversion course into another degree or a completely different aspect, but still being able to use your pharmacy degree knowledge that you have, but actually using it in a completely different way. So another role that may be of interest to you is actually working for the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, or MHRA, which you should all be aware of with the yellow card scheme within the BNF. And they employ both pharmacists and non-pharmacists, and there are again a variety of roles within MHRA that could be of a keen interest to you. So for example, you may be involved in assessing side effects of a medicine, cautions, contraindications, patient information leaflets. You could also be involved in assessing the actual product license of a particular medicine, say if their clinical indication has changed, looking at parallel imports and their approval, being involved with clinical trials, being involved with the safety and efficacy of a particular medicine. Again, there's so many different branches and roles within the MHRA, so if that is something that's interest to you, make sure you do research that further. Another role that might be of interest to you is doing aesthetics. Now with aesthetics, you don't necessarily need a particular qualification. You do have to attend a training course though, or several training courses, to be able to administer Botox and fillers. Now, there's a lot of dodgy people doing aesthetics, and they do a lot of botched jobs. So the benefit of having an MPharm degree or of being a pharmacist is that you have that bit more credibility. And the beauty of aesthetics is that you can do it full-time if you want to, or you can do it part-time if you want, depending on what your needs are and what your lifestyle is. I know a pharmacist who locum part of the time and then they do aesthetics the other part of the time. So it can be quite flexible in that sense, but again, that depends on where actually you work. It can take a while to build up your network, to build your profile, and to build your clients as well. But these are just various things to look into if that is, or various things to consider if the aesthetics does appeal to you. But again, make sure that you do your full research on that. And it's not just Botox and fillers. There are various other procedures within aesthetics that could be of interest to you. The more treatments that you can provide, the more appealing you will be to clients. It is one of those roles though that with particular procedures there is quite high risk, but again, it's what suits your needs and what really appeals to you. And if it is aesthetics, then do make sure that you look into that more. So the next few roles that I'm going to talk about are those that, if you are a pharmacist, roles that you can go into. And the first one that I'm going to mention is what I think of when someone says pharmacist, and that is a community pharmacist. Now, with community pharmacy, there's a lot of changes that are going to happen within the next few years, and that's because of the community pharmacy contractual framework. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure that you do read up on it. There's an abundance of information on the PSNC website, so that's a good place to start if you are looking for more information or you want to refresh your knowledge on what it is that I'm talking about. But for example, something like MURs is going to change. Some of the target groups are being taken out, so make sure that you are aware of it. And it is an exciting time for community pharmacists, because the way that I see it, the direction that community pharmacy is going in at the moment is to try and take off some of the pressures and some of the burdens that GPs have, and actually give pharmacists a bit more responsibility and actually give them space to be able to use their clinical knowledge more. I reckon pharmacists that are going to have to provide more services, and to be honest with you, The more services that you can provide, the more that you are accredited in, the more appealing that you will be to employers. So your role won't just involve, the usual dispensing process and checking that prescriptions are legally and clinically valid. You will probably be expected to provide a few more services. So if you're not already, do look into becoming accredited in, for example, hair retention programs, in travel vaccines, flu vaccines. Try and look into minor ailment schemes. Is that something that the area in which you work with provides? It's about seeing what opportunities there are out there and what different services that you can provide within your stores. With pharmacy itself, there are various ways that you can work up as well. So you could start off as a pharmacist in a store, then work up to being a pharmacy manager, then a store manager, area manager, and if you're working for a particularly big company, they might have their own clinical governance teams, and you could then work up towards that. So there's a lot of career progression within community pharmacy and a lot of different areas which you can go into. So don't just think that you're hindered and you're restricted to just being behind a counter. That's not true, and that's not the case. And like I said, and I can't stress it out enough, but the more services you can provide and the more accreditations that you have under your belt, the more appealing you will be to employers. Now, a lot of pharmacists are actually considering doing an independent prescribing course, and if you are thinking of doing that, it may actually be an idea to do a clinical diploma first. Reason being is because a lot of employers will take you more seriously if you're doing a clinical diploma, because they know that then you are being serious about doing an independent prescribing course. And the second reason is that a lot of large companies will actually fund your learning if you do a clinical diploma first. So if the independent prescribing course does appeal to you, then you do need to abide by the GPHC requirements. So firstly, you do need to be registered with either the GPHC or PSNI, the Pharmaceutical Society of Northern Ireland. You do need to have 2 years post pre-reg experience of being in a patient-oriented environment. This could be community, hospital or primary setting. You do need to identify the area which you want to develop your clinical speciality and expertise on. So it could be, for example, in respiratory, it could be in cardiovascular. It's what keen interest that you have. And you need to do a GPHC accredited course. And there's various universities which provide courses: Leeds, Reading, Aston, Bath, to name but a few. Now the prices of these courses can vary from what I can find, but it's usually around £2,000 to £3,000. As well as all of those requirements, a trainee also needs a designated medical practitioner, or DMP. And this DMP is responsible for supporting the trainee, is responsible for the trainee to be able to shadow them and overlook what they do, and the DMP is there to ultimately support the trainee. Now, a DMP could be, for example, a doctor in your GP surgery, but if you do end up struggling to find a suitable DMP, then most trusts actually have a non-prescribing lead, and they will have contacts or a list of contacts of potential DMPs. Or you could even ask your course provider for if they have any contacts or lists of potential DMPs as well. So there are ways of finding a DMP if you are struggling yourself. Another role which is becoming really appealing to many pharmacists is working within GP practices. Now, being a clinical pharmacist, it's very ideal if you are an independent prescriber, and again if you've done a clinical diploma as well. So with working in a GP practice, again, there's various tasks that you will be expected to do, a variety of roles available to you, and essentially it's about ensuring that patient safety is being adhered to and that there is a high quality of care. So you could be involved in, for example, in polypharmacy, in ensuring that patients aren't on so many medicines and actually some of these medicines aren't benefiting them anymore. You could be involved in providing clinical advice, in treatment, and especially very fitting with the moment with Brexit and whatnot, there's a lot of medicine shortages. So actually you could be involved in providing and suggesting alternatives to medicines that may be out of stock at the moment. So it is a very keen role for a lot of pharmacists at the moment, and again it's allowing pharmacists to utilise their clinical knowledge more. So the other big role within pharmacy is Hospital pharmacist. So particularly as a newly qualified pharmacist, you will be expected to do rotations on the various pharmacy services that are within your hospital. So this could be, for example, aseptic services, dispensary services, radio pharmacy, medicines information. And as part of your role, again, it's a very varied role. So you'll be checking prescriptions for any errors, ensuring that they're safe for the actual individual, actually participating in ward rounds, taking drug histories, making sure that medicines are being stored in the way that they're meant to be stored, that they are appropriate, that they are safe. You could also be involved in writing guidelines for drug use within your hospital as well, and also preparing and quality checking sterile medicines, for example, IV medication. So again, a very varied role, a very sought after role as well, and one that may be of keen interest to you. So another role that might be of interest to you is to work within education and training. And again, there's various ways that you can do this. So one way is to actually work within a training provider, and with that your role might be to present to students. It could be to prepare materials and resources for pharmacy technicians, for dispensing assistants. Your role could actually be within the training organisation where you provide help and advice to pharmacists on specific questions or queries that they may have. Another way that you could get involved with education and training is to be a teacher practitioner. So as part of a teacher practitioner, you may work part of your time within a university delivering modules such as pharmacy practice, and the other part of your time you may be working in a community, in a hospital, you may be working as a locum. Or you could do a PhD and then become an academic lecturer within a university. So again, if education and training is something which appeals to you, there's various different ways in which you can do that. Or it may be of interest to you to work as part of care homes. So there's two different ways that you could do this. One is to work as part of medicines optimization in the care home, or the other is to be part of a community pharmacy which dispenses, provides and delivers that medication to the care home directly. So with either role, you'll be working very closely with care homes, with their staff, with their teams. With working in a community pharmacy and dispensing clinically and accurately checking the medications for the care home, you might not necessarily get to see those patients very often because you'll be dealing more with the care home staff than with the actual patients. Whereas if you're working within medicines optimization in a care home, you'll probably have a bit more patient face-to-face consultations and such likes with them. So it just depends what appeals more to you. But again, that's another role which you could explore if that is something of interest to you. Another role that might be of interest to you is as a palliative care pharmacist. Now, as you can imagine from the name, it's a highly emotional role, but it can be a very rewarding one as well, and it's a highly sought after role too. Now, technically, there is no specific training required to be a palliative care pharmacist, but having additional training is a key asset, and palliative care pharmacists can end up obtaining a Foundation of Palliative Care certificate and can complete additional training too, which could really help benefit their role. Now, if this is of something that is interest to you, then as a way of getting into a role like that, you could start off by working in a community pharmacy which is affiliated with a hospice service. So this will give you more of a feel of the type of role that is involved with being a palliative care pharmacist. It's a good way of introducing the role as well, and a good way of stepping stone into it. So if that is of something that's interest to you, it may be worth looking at those community pharmacies that are affiliated with those hospice services. Another role that might be of interest to you is prison pharmacy. So you can go straight into working into prison pharmacy, or actually, like with palliative pharmacists, you can work in a community pharmacy that is affiliated with a prison pharmacy, and then see if this is the kind of role and if this is of something that's of interest to you. Now, I have worked in a pharmacy before that was affiliated with a prison pharmacy, so we were responsible for dispensing and making sure that it was all accurate. We would then provide that to our pharmacy team situated within the prison, and then it would be down to them to actually hand out the medication accordingly. And so you're working very closely with the pharmacy team that is within the prison. A lot of paperwork is involved with it as well, as I'm sure you can imagine, but it is a very interesting role too. So again, you can go straight into working as a prison pharmacist, or work within a community pharmacy that is affiliated with a prison pharmacist and see if that is something that is of interest to you. And last, by no means least, you could also work as part of the GPHC. And of course, the GPHC is a very big company, and so there are very many different roles within there. So, for example, you could be part of the accreditation and recognition panel, so looking at maybe current or prospective pharmacy schools, ensuring that they meet the standards that are required, being part of accrediting the standards for professionals, premises and education. You could also be involved in inspecting pharmacy premises as well. So again, a very varied role, a role which is very sought after as well, but again, if this is of something that's interest to you, like with all the other roles that I mentioned, the key thing is making sure that you do your research. So I hope this video provided you with a few nuggets of information of various roles that are out there, and like I said at the beginning of this video, there are so many other roles. I've just handpicked a few, but there are very many roles that are out there for both those that have passed their pre-reg and they are on the register as a pharmacist, and for those who have their MPharm degree, either decided to not go through with their pre-reg year or maybe failed their pre-reg. Either way, you have your MPharm degree, and there are so many different opportunities that are available out there to you. It's just a case of finding it, doing your research, getting your LinkedIn, building up those networks, finding like-minded people who are in roles which are of keen interest to you, and building those relations. All these things really do help and can really help plunge you to that next step of where it is that you want to be. Sometimes the hardest thing can actually be figuring out what it is that you want to do, but without researching what is out there and actually finding out what it is that you don't want to do can actually put you on the path to finding out what it is that does work for you and what it is that you do want to do. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, then why not give it a like, share, subscribe. Do also visit my Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And until next time, if you're revising, then good luck with your revision. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching.